Hello, I'm Eric, a sales rep here at Atlantic British. Today we're going to talk about building up a Discovery 2 into an off-road vehicle. They've gotten really affordable now. You can pick up a D2 for $3,500 to $5,000, put $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in it, and have a very good off-road vehicle. This one we picked up a couple years ago. We've been driving it around. We've used it as a test mule, so now we're going to build it up into an off-road truck. With Doug's help, we're going to put suspension, front and rear bumpers, and then slowly build it up into a lifestyle truck. We'll have videos that'll show Doug doing each process, and we'll post those as time goes on. This truck's in good shape. It's very straight for the year, and we've had it for a few years, as I said. So stay tuned, and we'll have more information as time goes on.
Hi, I'm Doug, your tech support representative here at Atlantic British, and welcome back to Project D2. Now, we've got the steel bumpers both front and rear, which is going to give you better protection on your vehicle, front and rear, but what do we do about the sides? So what we're going to do is we're going to add a set of rock sliders on this. We're going to take the plastic trim that sits at underneath the doors on both sides of the vehicle and replace them with steel bars that are solidly mounted to the vehicle, so that if should you come across a high rock or a high log, you make contact, you're not going to do any damage or break plastic trim. It's going to protect the vehicle. Plus, it has the added feature where you've got the holes already pre-drilled, so if you have your hijack with you, you have a mount to put the hijack on if you need to raise the vehicle and get it clear of an obstacle. This kit, which is the 9596 D2, is going to give you the two side sliders, the mounting brackets, and all the hardware. It's a relatively simple installation. It does take some time, probably anywhere from 2 to 4 hours depending on your level of technical skill. But overall, if you're going to be taking these vehicles off-road, you definitely want the extra protection. So we're going to show you how to mount these on the vehicle and take it from there. Alright, so our first step is going to be, obviously, we need to take the plastic trim that sits in the door sills off first to get it out of the way. This is where we're going to be putting the rock sliders. Now what you have only holding this on is up front there's a small stud with a 10mm nut on it, and we're just going to put a ratchet with a deep socket. We'll take that off. More than likely that's going to snap off when you go to remove that, and so not a big deal. You're not going to be using it in the installation of the rock sliders, so don't worry if you do snap the stud off, you can leave it. On the sides and into the door sills are 10 pop rivet style plastic retainers, and we'll show you basically how to remove those. And there's a small recess on both sides where you can either use one of these tools that were made actually specifically for this kind of pop rivet, and what will happen is the jaws will grab up inside those little recesses and just pull out. Now it's going to leave, it's a two-piece pop rivet, so it's going to leave a base piece. Just sneak in underneath it with the pliers, pop them out. If you can't find one of those, what we can do is put a screwdriver tip down inside that recess and work it out just a little bit, and then grab it with a pair of diagonal cutting pliers and pop that out. So that gives you a couple different ways to get it out. Now, like I said, we've got 10 of them all along the side, so we're going to get all those out. We'll take that front stud out. This is all the way up front, and just in front of the mud flap directly points down. So you should be able to easily get it with a short extension, deep socket, and a 3/8 ratchet. Alright, something else to mention while we're taking this stud, this is where the location of that stud I was mentioning is. If you have the factory mud flap still on, we're going to take that off as well. You've got 2 Phillips screws right here. I actually leave this in place when I put the sills in. We may come up with a way of maybe we can reattach this to the sill. It's not necessary. You may like to keep it on the vehicle, but in the meantime we are going to remove it. So just for information purposes, I've laid out, this is the plastic piece that is in there right now. You can see obviously there's no structural strength to that whatsoever. You catch a rock or a log, it's just going to knock that right off. As opposed to a nice heavy piece of steel. And you'll see that it also has the cutouts for the hijack, so you have a point where you can install the hijack to lift it. Now these are the 2 T-brackets that we're going to install on this rock slider before we install it into the vehicle. But the one thing I wanted to touch base on is the 10 pop rivets that you took out of the side of this are going to be replaced with a nutsert. Now this is a collapsible piece, collapsible nut. You use these on sheet metal. There's different ways to install them. You can try putting a bolt in it with a nut and collapsing them. I found that to be very hard on that. What you really need is a nutsert tool. And if you don't have one of these, I know a lot of the tool rental places do have these available. You can rent one. This will make your life a lot easier. Considering that you're going to be installing 20 of these to install both sides of the rock sliders, definitely well worth the effort and the little extra cost. And essentially all it does is it screws onto the end of this, and you're going to install that in a hole, and as you squeeze the handle, it's going to collapse this nutsert so that it pinches itself in place on the sheet metal. Alright, so we have the nutsert installed on that, and you'll notice, obviously, the holes are too small. You'll read in the instructions, it'll tell you to drill a hole out that will fit tightly around the nutsert. I found that size to be 27/64. I'm going to install this on a 1/2 inch drive drill. If you have a 3/8 drill, that's fine. This will also install on that. And we have to drill out all 10 of these holes. Alright, so what we've done is we've drilled out all 10. We've got a nutsert set up on the tool. And I mean, we wanted a good tight fit. This should just about fit in there. Nice tight fit. Now what I found works, especially when you have like the tool like this, if you had one of the hydraulic nutsert tools, those you can fully seat the nutsert. But in the case of one like this, it'll lock it, but it doesn't fully collapse it. So essentially what I've done is we got a long 8mm bolt that threads into the nutsert, and then we've put a washer and a nut on there. Now I use a ratcheting box wrench. If you don't have one, you can use a regular standard wrench. You're going to hold the bolt in place and run the nut in, and you're going to feel resistance. And what that's doing now is that just pinching that nutsert even tighter on the sheet metal to lock it in good. And what you're going to do is you're going to get to a point where all of a sudden it's going to get tight. You're seated. Back the nut off. Take the bolt out. And there's your nutsert. And this is a nice tight fit. So this isn't going to go anywhere, and what's going to happen is once we put the rock slider in place, we're going to be putting the bolts in. So there's one. I got 9 more to go. Alright, so as you can see, we were successful. We got all our nutserts in, so there's all 10 all the way across. Everything is in nice and tight. So the next step before we put this up in the air, we have the T-brackets that bolt onto the back of the slides themselves. Now these basically are installed on pre-drilled, pre-tapped holes on the back of the slide. You can see the way this is oriented where it dips down towards the bottom of the slide, and then you can see with elongated holes that obviously this is meant for some adjustment. So you have 2 12mm bolts that thread right into the slide itself. Now I found on this particular kit that the bolts are a little tight sometimes in these slotted holes, so you may want to take a die grinder or a Dremel tool. If you find them to be a little tight, just open them up a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to just run these in. You got a 3/4 inch socket, 1/2 inch drive extension, and a 1/2 inch drive ratchet. You're going to run these in until they basically stop turning. Then reverse your ratchet and back it off a 1/2 turn. That will allow this to slide back and forth. We're going to tighten those down after we get everything else in place. Alright, so now at this point what we're going to do, let's move this out of the way. And we got 2 of the 10 bolts that are going to bolt to the side of the rock slide into those rivet nuts. 2 8mm. These are the shorter of the bolts that you get with the kit. You'll have some 8mm that are about almost 1/2 inch longer than those we're going to use down underneath. So this would be much easier with 2 people, but if you're not that fortunate, Get your knee underneath it. I'm just going to get 2 bolts started. Being it's nice fresh metal, they thread in nice and easy. So I'll put one in the middle there. And I can't really see that, but I can feel it. Alright, so those 2 are going to hold that in place so we can run the other 8 in. We're not going to tighten them at this point. We're just going to leave them a little snug. We may need to maneuver this around a little bit. Again, that's why the slided holes. Now, take note that anything manufactured has tolerance. So all those bolt holes may not be in the exact same place on every vehicle, so thusly the holes in the kit aren't exactly where they were on another vehicle. So you may find that you may need to dress one hole out a little bit, do a little bit of adjusting again with a Dremel tool or a die grinder, electric or air if you have them. So don't be despondent if you line it up and find a couple of holes not lined up exactly where you can get the bolt in. You're just going to trim it down, put the bolt in there, and that'll work just fine. Alright, so we have our rock slide up in place. We get the 10 bolts in up top. Like I said, we've got these bolts backed off, so we got a little bit of movement side to side. And what that's for is so that we put these last 2 adapter plates on. And you'll notice one has a deeper offset than the other. The shallow one is going to go in the back, deep offset in the front. So once you have everything up in place here, then we'll just do a little test fit. This hole on the top tab is actually going to slide in over this exposed stud. This is one of your body to frame mounts. And that's just going to tuck up in there. This is going to sit about level. So this is why we want to be able to move this side to side. So we bring this up to where it makes contact on the plate. And we'll drop that back out. And we'll snug these in. So now we'll tighten these up. And we're going to do the same to the rear. Essentially we're going to just take the plate, kind of loose fit it in, see where it needs to be. Because what we're going to do is this other hole up top, once we get these all in place, we're going to mark it and then we're going to drill it. So before we do that, we need to know where all the bolt holes are going to be. And we can actually fool around with that a little bit because that's going to be right there. Alright, so now we've set and tightened up our T-brackets, and we're going to go back to laying this in place. Now these will be the longer 8mm bolts that I mentioned earlier in this video. And essentially what you're going to do is you're going to bolt 2 flat washers and a nut. And once we get everything started, then we can actually hold it up in place, and we're going to run these in and tighten them up. We're just going to set that right there, and we'll go get our tools and get that tightened right up. So now we have the plates up in their position. You can see how that sits. It doesn't really matter where that higher hole sits. It's not going to line up with any previous hole drilled in the system. You're just going to mark it. You can drill from the back side, even drill a little bit bigger than the size of the hole that's in the plate, wherever it ends up. And you can actually get a small drill pointing forward so that you can actually just drill right through the existing hole. So once we've done that, everything else is in, it's tight. We drill, we put the 2 bolts in, 1 bolt front, 1 bolt rear, and the rock slides are in. So let's get those in, we'll get those drilled out. And remember, when you're drilling, especially if it's above your head, always wear safety glasses. I've had enough steel taken out of my eyes. It's not worth it. Make sure you put them on. So that's what's involved putting rock sliders on the side of your D2. Definitely gives you a lot of extra protection. Certainly more stress and stability than what you're going to have with just a plastic sill panel. So if you really like to go out and do some serious four-wheeling, these are an absolute necessity. Maybe it'll take you 3, maybe 4 hours, depending on your mechanical skill, to be able to install them as we just did. Once they're on, they're good and solid. They're going to give you plenty of protection. And again, you've got the cutouts already in there, so should you need the hijack, you've also got a lift point. So when you're ready to put the rock sliders on your D2, just call any of our knowledgeable salesmen at 1-800-533-2210. And thanks for watching.